Artificial intelligence, or AI, has increasingly become, for many of us, a part of daily existence. It's changing how we work, how we entertain ourselves, and how we engage with one another online. We're encountering it in places where we often are not even aware of it, in the products we advertise, the insurances we quote, and the healthcare we receive. But although AI is becoming more pervasive, are we actually prepared for the changes and implications for the labor force? What about our national security, and what about our politics? And what role is Latin America playing in these changes? This is the first episode of a two-part series on current developments on AI and what they mean at the policy level. My guest for part one in this conversation is Claudia del Pozo. Claudia is the founder and director of the Eon Institute, a women-led think tank based in Mexico that seeks to future-proof society as our technology rapidly changes. She is also a member of the United Kingdom's Emerging Technologies Advisory Council in Mexico and has consulted on AI governance for the EU AI Act, coordinated a sandbox for more transparent and explainable AI systems in Mexico, and managed the Mexican National AI Agenda for the IA 2030 MX Coalition. I'm Tony Payan, Director of the Center for the U.S. and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy in Houston, Texas. And with me is Alejandro Dabdoub, one of our friends and allies here at the Center for the U.S. and Mexico. And this is Mexico Centered. Claudia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Claudia, I have the first question for you. Tell us, Mexico and AI, what first comes to mind? It looks like there's a lot of challenges, a lot of things going on, not enough resources, not enough talent, not enough policy attention. Tell us the state of AI in Mexico.
Okay, this is going to be hard to stay excited, but the state of AI in Mexico. So I always like to start by saying that in 2018, Mexico was one of the first 10 countries in the world to publish an AI strategy. There wasn't the time to implement it from the government because there was a change in administration. And as we know, one of the challenges in Latin America is having continuity in priorities between administrations. But there was a time when we were one of the biggest leaders and the lighthouse in Latin America. Sadly, the story goes, it went downhill from there. Unfortunately, we're now, I think, in position 64 in one of the rankings in terms of AI globally. I think it's Oxford Insights who did this ranking. So the previous administration, you know what's interesting is you have to look at it by administration because that's how much things change. So the previous administration published the National Digital Strategy 3 years late. It barely mentioned AI. And now there's kind of renewed hope. So it is renewed hope, but it's also a matter of, okay, and? So as we know, there's a lot going on in Mexico. The new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, she's a scientist. She believes in technology. She's created a new agency for digital transformation. There's the new AI commission in the Senate, the sub-commission for AI in the Chamber of Deputies. So the places are there, but what does it mean? And I'm a bit scared that what we've seen so far might be what it is. It's, I think, a focus on the use of AI within the government to reduce spending, to be aligned with this strategy of budget cuts. And I mean, that's a good thing, but I wish there was more transparency. But
is there really a way to save money by cutting government administrative expenses? I mean, it seems to me that that's already been cut back and it's kind of lean and mean already.
I agree. I think some things can be done because Mexico is a bit late in terms of digitalization. So there are efficiency cuts that can be found for sure. But I wish that there was still the INAI in order to tell us how AI is being used, because I think what you're pointing towards is the use of AI, for example, for social benefits from government. I'm thinking of the case of Holland. That was a disaster. Denmark recently got a warning from Amnesty International saying you shouldn't be doing that. There's a lot of biases and it might not go well. So what mostly I was kind of looking forward to is maybe a renewed interest in promoting the AI ecosystem, AI innovation kind of outwards. But I'm only seeing it as kind of something that's happening or that is planned to happen within the government behind closed doors.
And given the current political environment in Mexico where the government seems to want to re-centralize important segments of the economy and even create new companies and buy new companies and resuscitate new companies, do you think that the Mexican government has the power, the political will, the ideology to just simply delegate, in a way, I don't know if that's the word, but delegate the development of AI and the deployment of AI to the private sector and say there are some things the government can't do. It's a little bit like a car, right? Let the private sector build the car, put the technology in the car, and then the government is the one that tells you what the rules are to drive a car, what permissions you need or permit you need to drive the car. So the government owns the regulatory component, but allow the private sector to develop the car and develop the technology. Is there an ideological alignment in Mexico today to let AI do what AI can do?
It's not my impression that the government understands really what's at stake and the opportunities that AI represents. I also don't have the impression that there's this openness to collaboration so far with the industry from the federal administration. It might change. It might become more of a priority. But my impression, again, is that it's more something that they want to do inside the government. And there's also this idea or this narrative that AI is something colonialist that is coming to Mexico. And Mexico needs to do its own thing with regards to AI. And I feel like that's just a huge disconnect. That means that there can't be a conversation on AI between Mexico and the rest of the world, which we desperately need. And one thing that I do want to say in all fairness is the AI Commission of the Senate has been having conversations with the ecosystem, including big tech. So I think they are a key pillar of hope for me. They are, I think from them, we will see a lot of development, a lot of proposals. They're just starting and they've said, okay, what's happening? Let's talk. And I think that's a great way to start. So I'm very excited about that.
So you were talking about budget cuts and the government wanting to control. Don't you think that would really deepen the gap in our society? If the companies start making all the money and putting all the infrastructure and everything for the AI, and the government doesn't have any control, any policies, my concern would be, one thing would be the values that are going to be behind it, always keeping the human factor, and the division that it can cost.
Echo that concern fully. And I think a lot of the people who work in AI ethics do as well. I mean, it's interesting something that's going on in Mexico, and this is my perception of it. I feel like there's been a narrative shift that leads to a lot of criticism of the EU AI Act to a point where they don't even want to look at it. And I don't say copy it, definitely not, but it's something really valuable that we have. And especially this year, with everything coming into place, we're going to have so many learnings from it. I think it's very important to keep that in mind and to look to the learnings that the European Union can provide and say, well, this didn't work. This doesn't make sense in Latin America, but this is very interesting. But this narrative of saying, it's counterproductive to innovation. Well, what kind of innovation is it counterproductive to? Because innovation that has a positive social impact, I think it'll harm maybe the innovation that we don't want to see. How many studies have proven that the use of AI for HR is full of biases? I mean, maybe that's the type of innovation that needs to be reduced. So I am a bit worried about that. And I think that we're 5 organizations in civil society really pushing for responsible AI. And our voices are being heard. We're part of the conversations, but it needs to go beyond that. And the government really needs to understand what's at stake, more than just the AI Commission of the Senate.
And like many things in Mexico, I think there is an uneven development in terms of AI. I mean, the states like Chihuahua and Jalisco, Mexico City, and Nuevo León, perhaps, they're obviously up ahead because they're developing their ecosystems and such. But there are states where there's probably nothing. I mean, can you think of Oaxaca? Can you think of Chiapas? Can you think of Tabasco? Can you think of Tlaxcala? What is going on there? So they're clearly, and I'm afraid that AI is going to, in many ways, contribute to broadening that gap or widening that gap between the states that can and the states that can't.
That's completely true. I think that's one of the challenges of AI not being a national priority, there not being a federal agenda, strategy. It's down to the states. And we all know it. In the previous administration, we weren't going to work with the federal government. It was working with states. Guanajuato has also been pushing for more AI. Yucatan in certain aspects as well. But if it's not a priority at a state level, it's not going to happen. And I understand that, Oaxaca and Chiapas have different priorities, but I think there's a lack of understanding that AI will affect your people. The inequality that can be caused by AI, the unjust decisions, they will affect your people, whether you choose to be a part of it or not.
Differentiating the states, what recommendation would you make to international companies coming into Mexico to kind of level the playground for everybody?
I think Mexico is definitely an interesting place to expand your AI solution to. And I think that what we really need is a focus on responsible AI to be a competitive advantage. So, if you're doing that, come in, promote it, it's responsible, be transparent, just tick all the boxes of the AI ethics reports and position yourself as a responsible player. And I think that will spark a conversation, or rather, I hope that'll spark a conversation even among the public. Well, wait, why are you saying you're responsible? Is someone else not? I really think that if it's not something that we're going to see happen from the government, there needs to be a public discourse where we're demanding solutions, that are aligned with AI ethics. And it's something really difficult to do. I write in different columns in Wired Magazine about it, but you can't reach the whole population. But we need to do it together. If everyone can kind of start putting responsible AI on the table, it'll inevitably become something that sticks in people's mind. Why are you responsible? Is there a downside to this?
I have another question. Let me go back to the issue of the uneven development and the uneven impact of AI on various states. We talked geographically, but now let's talk about the economy itself. Two things that I like to hear your thoughts on. The first is, of course, the idea that it's going to impact the labor force. Some jobs, accounting, legal jobs, design, things like that, they're certainly going to benefit from AI. There's going to be different professions. But Mexico's economy is, 55 to 60% informal. How is that going to help the informal economy? What is the impact that it's going to have on a worker that sells tacos in the streets, that sells different trinkets door to door? That's a large part of the economy in Mexico. So tell us a little bit about that impact. And the other thing is, Mexico is a manufacturing powerhouse. It is intimately connected with the economy of the United States. It's an export economy, but AI can also come into the manufacturing floor in the form of robots and learning processes. And will it replace the workforce? What are those people that work in the maquila industry in Monterrey, in San Luis, in León, in Tijuana, in Juárez going to do? So tell us about this interaction. And I don't want to be pessimistic. We were talking earlier about the positive narrative around AI. There's obviously very good things, but there's also a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear about what it can do to workers and the economy itself.
Yeah, a few years ago, we had a project at the border between the U.S. and Mexico to see how it could become an AI powerhouse, how we could help them articulate the different actors there. And the truth is, we're not seeing that much automation in the manufacturing area because, sadly, or is it positive, is it bad, but wages aren't that high. So it doesn't make sense to automate in most situations, which is terrible.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not a good thing, but you're safe from automation.
Something wrong.
Exactly. So I don't think we'll see that much change, but there are some factories that are automating. And the reason that we started working there was because the government called us and said, this huge factory is going to automate. What do we do with the people? And so there, there's the whole conversation is of who does reskilling and upskilling pertain to? Should it be the government? Should it be the industry? Who's going to do it? At the end of the day, who is responsible doesn't matter. Who's doing it? And that's something really important that we're not seeing. And again, I think it's part of this lack of understanding of what AI entails in all levels, in all sorts of spheres and related to risks. But where I do see a potential boost to employment related to AI in a way is in the chips and semiconductor industry. So it's become a huge priority for the U.S. It is among Mexico's priorities as well. There's an alignment. How can Mexico kind of become the manufacturer for the U.S. among this whole, nearshoring, reshoring move? I think that jobs could be created there, but let's talk about it. Let's create a joint strategy instead of having, parallel dialogues. I think that could become something interesting.
So following on this, what can Mexico do to increase the education? Because the wages are super low. Everybody has access to a cell phone. I mean, everybody could have access to certain kind of education. So how can we retrain labor forces to get to where you're talking?
That is an amazing question that I've been asking myself for the past 10 years, pretty much. My dream would be a national campaign, and there's a lot of national campaigns in Mexico right now. There's a huge one about fentanyl. But sadly, AI isn't understood to be at that level or that much of a problem. And it's funny, I don't know if you guys have seen the World Economic Forum risk report. They divide it in the short term, 2 years, and the long term, 10 years. And in the short term, there's loads of elements that are related to AI, like misinformation, disinformation, widening of inequality gaps, even pollution. But you don't see AI until the sixth biggest risk in 10 years, negative impacts of AI. And I'm appalled. How do you not realize that a lot of the risks you're looking at in 2 years are generated by AI? I think there's just this global misunderstanding that it is a key risk. And I might sound negative. I actually think AI can bring a lot of opportunities, but you need to mitigate the risks. That's going to be key. And in terms of educating the population, I wish the government would do a campaign. And I think that's where the importance of civil society lies, and the work that Eon Institute is doing and other organizations as well. We dedicate so much time to educating, be it in universities, in conferences, teaching, the generation of tomorrow, or teaching entrepreneurs today how to do it responsibly and why that's important, kind of making a business case for it. If your AI isn't well calibrated, isn't ethical, let's say, if you're discriminating half of the applicants, let's say, well, you're not finding the most qualified applicants. It's just not working right. Or you don't want to end up in the news for a scandal involving discrimination, so do it right. It's a lot of work, and right now we're feeling a little bit alone. We wish that there was more support. We're trying to do everything we can because we understand what's at stake.
The concern when it comes to education, which is what Alejandro was just talking about, is not just educating the public about the potential of AI, the benefits of AI, and sort of promoting a more positive discourse around AI, but also what's happening in the classroom, right? Are the engineers, the mathematicians graduating with the right skills? We see that this administration, this project, the Observador Sheinbaum project, has been implementing something they call the new Mexican school, which is a lot more ideological, sort of take math off the curriculum and put in some more ideology or some even Marxism and things like that. Well, that's not going to help to get the next generation, the kids in elementary school, in junior high, in prep school, out to be ready to engage what is going to be a very different labor market. So I feel that the policy is rubbing against the future, and it doesn't look pretty.
It doesn't. Add to that the fact that Mexico ranks last in the OECD for education. Add to that all the challenges that the country has had, the delay that has been caused in learning from the pandemic, and as well, generative AI coming in and putting at risk critical thinking for the next generations. That's something that really worries me. That's something that I've been trying to work on with different local governments. It's definitely of concern. And one of the things that I think this conversation tends to go, how do we get the programmers to be responsible? And I want to look at it the other way. How do we get the humanities involved in this conversation? How do we tell a philosopher, hey, actually, you could definitely work in AI, a linguist? This is a huge avenue of opportunity for you, and your voice is missing from the conversation. There are so many efforts to get programmers to know AI ethics, and I want to focus on the other side of the coin. Let's bring more people who know that to the conversation. They don't need to become programmers. They just need to work together. So that's something that we're pushing for a lot, and that's why we give a lot of talks in humanities.
So now that you're talking about people coming together and everything, what would you recommend be the first step for people that are just listening now or they're starting to get involved in AI, don't really know what you're doing, their organization? How do you recommend for them to get involved?
I think a good way to get involved is knowing what's happening and knowing how it can impact you. Because we have this idea that AI is something that's coming, that's going to affect humanity and our very capability to survive. I don't know. But what I know is that it might affect your ability to enter a university, to get a credit. It's affecting that right now. You might have been affected and you don't even know it. So learn about this, read up on it. From Eon Institute on Instagram, you can find us every week. We share news in Spanish, so it'll be an opportunity to practice. We share news of what's happening in the AI sphere from a social impact perspective. And you'll learn about interesting and terrifying cases of negative impacts of AI. And I think that'll make you wonder, gee, where could I be impacted? And if you go to the bank and you ask for a loan and they say no, but you ticked all the boxes, you could say, hey, how did you make this decision? Could a human review it, please? I think just having that agency is so important, and it's something that the public is lacking right now. So just, get more involved in the conversation, read up, watch documentaries. Coded Bias is amazing. It's an exciting thing that's happening. I don't want to get everyone down. It's exciting, but we need to know where the limits are.
We're certainly out of time, but I want to squeeze one more question in there, even if we take another minute or two. What do you think AI is going to do to the U.S.-Mexico relationship? It's going to have an impact for sure on law enforcement, on security cooperation, on manufacturing integration, on economic integration, on labor mobility. I mean, there's going to be kinds of issues. Can you talk to this binational context?
We just finished writing a paper for Brookings Institution on this exact topic, how to include AI in the USMCA renegotiations. Super interesting. I think there's a lot of potential to reinvigorate both economies, promote more collaboration. Hopefully Mexico can push for a responsible focus. But the challenge is that other topics are taking priority. Migration, fentanyl, again. Those are taking a front seat in the conversation, and we risk forgetting about other important elements like artificial intelligence. So there needs to be a strategic way to include it in the conversation. I think as the United States has tied AI to national security, I think there, in some way, it's prioritizing it. And we need to see how the U.S. and Mexico's priorities align in order to collaborate. And both countries have recently reset their priorities. So we need to do some research. What's funny and what's happening is that each country is kind of looking to the other one saying, well, what do you want? What do you want from me? So someone please say something. Someone please say Mexico can become a manufacturer of chips and semiconductors for the U.S. Let's make it happen. But please stop being in this frozen mode where everyone's just staring at each other. But there's a lot that can be done. Let's just do it. Let's start somewhere.
I'm Tony Payan, Director of the Center for the U.S. and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy in Houston, Texas. And this is Mexico Centered. The Judy Leigh Allen Mexico Centered podcast is brought to you by the Baker Institute Center for the U.S. and Mexico, which seeks to have a meaningful impact on the U.S.-Mexico relationship through binational policy research and solutions and by convening leaders who can bridge the world of ideas and the world of action. Special thanks to Judy Leigh Allen for her generous support of the work that we do here at the Center, and thank you, Alejandro Dabdoub, especially for your support on the AI program here at the Center. This episode was produced by Tony Payan and Karina Ziemel. AV production was led by Kevin Young. Please be sure to visit us at bakerinstitute.org/Mexico to learn more. Thanks for listening.